Try to guess the hidden meanings behind the stories in this video. Leave your guesses in the comments below. The answers will be in the description of the next Creepy Riddles video.
Story 1. Albatross.
In 1986, a man and his family had won tickets to Fiji in a contest. The family was packed and ready, and couldn't stop chatting about what they expected to see on their holiday. About halfway through the flight, the plane had a critical engine failure. The plane plummeted towards the ocean, and the last things the man heard were the terrified cries of his children. The man awoke on a desert island. It was late afternoon when he got up and looked around. He heard cries coming from behind him, and when he turned, he saw his wife and the pilot sitting around a campfire. He ran over to them. The wife explained how they crashed and all the other passengers had died, including their children. The husband shed a tear. As they discussed what they were going to do, he noticed that his wife was missing a leg. It had been severed at the knee. He tried to tend to her injury, but the wound had become infected. She slipped into a coma and died in a matter of days. The husband and the pilot buried her body on the other side of the island. The pilot said a few words over the grave and they returned to the campfire. They sat there thinking about how they would survive. Finally, the husband fell asleep. For the next few days, they sat around the fire waiting for help to arrive. They knew that if they weren't rescued soon, they would starve to death. One morning, the husband awoke and smelled something cooking. Looking around, he saw that the pilot was cooking something over the fire. He said he had managed to trap an albatross and was making albatross soup. They managed to survive by eating the albatross soup until they were rescued. Many years later, the husband was still grieving the death of his wife and family. He went to a restaurant and ordered albatross soup just for old time's sake. As he put the first spoonful in his mouth, his eyes grew wide, and the spoon fell from his hand. It tasted nothing like albatross soup.
Story 2. Rain.
It was raining very heavily that night when we arrived at the spot. I stopped the car in front of the tunnel and parked temporarily. My friends and I had heard a number of rumors and legends about the area being haunted. They said if you drove your car through the tunnels at night, a strange thing would happen. We had come to test our courage and see if the rumors were true. There was an eerie and foreboding atmosphere in the air. The place was quite remote, and not many cars came down this way. It didn't look the way you would expect a haunted place to look. After a while, I started the car again and slowly advanced into the tunnel. It was the first time I had experienced something like this, and I feel a strange mixture of excitement and fear. My friends were smiling from ear to ear like children on an amusement park ride. We drove very slowly, hoping something would happen, but we reached the end of the tunnel without experiencing anything supernatural. My friends were disappointed. They had been staring out the windows, watching the walls of the tunnel expectantly. "Let's go through again," I said. Everyone agreed, and I made a U-turn at the end of the tunnel. Once again, we didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. We drove back and forth a few times before we started to grow bored. The rhythm of the falling rain on the roof of the car was becoming annoying. After 3 or 4 round trips, one of my friends said, "Come on guys, let's go home." I thought he was probably right. After all, it was getting boring, but there was just something strange about the tone of his voice. Just before we came back to the tunnel exit, I stopped the car and looked back. I noticed that my friend who had said "let's go home" was shivering as if he was very cold. The others noticed too, and they stared at him in surprise. "What's wrong with you?" they asked. "Did you see something?" "Let's just get out of here," he said, his hands trembling. The rain was getting heavier and more intense. The raindrops bouncing off the car bonnet made a harsh sound. I decided to find somewhere nearby where he could calm down. We drove out of the tunnel and turned onto the highway. There was a family restaurant at the side of the road, so I pulled into the parking lot and brought the car to a stop. My friend, who had been trembling, finally settled down. "All right," I said. "Now can you tell us what you saw?" "You didn't hear it?" he asked, giving us a questioning look. "What was it?" asked my other friend. "Some kind of mysterious sound, a strange voice?" We had no idea what he was talking about. "I couldn't hear anything above the sound of the rain," I replied. "Then you heard it," he said in a loud voice. He sat forward and his eyes grew wide. "Just tell us," we demanded angrily. "What were we supposed to hear?" After a long silence, he opened his mouth. "It was the rain," he said. "The dripping sound of the rain."